Hello, everybody. It is your Uncle Fish back again for School of Fish Art Stream. J-Man wants a Gatling gun on the end of his tail. Oh my goodness. J-Man says the tail's where you put all the heavy artillery. Yeah. Said he used to have a howitzer on the end of his tail.
Welcome back for the School of Fish every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's correct. It's 10 a.m. Central Time where I'm living. Usually Thursdays is reserved for patrons only that subscribe to my Patreon account for as little as $3 a month. But this one is a special public one again. Not that rare, but fairly rare, because this time we've got my buddy Joe Soliz on from Child's Play Comics, and I'm working on a variant cover for him. Good morning, sir. Glad you could be here with us. Always a good day to have Sarah in the house. Anyway, we got my buddy Joe here. I'm going to bring him on so we can talk about his Child's Play Comics and the series that he has going and the brand new issue that is coming to Kickstarter. What is it? It's launching October 1st, is it?
Yes, sir. That's right. Thanks for having me on, Fish. I'm super excited. You're like a superstar to me. So like, just couldn't get to come on here with you. It's super fun. And yeah, so I should have, I don't have, I know you have green zone shirts. I should have worn one of those. That way I can be one of those guys who, wears the band shirt to the concert type of thing.
It has blown my mind that like anybody has wanted to go buy like a Kaw shirt, because I just set up the shop and I put a link to it in the book, and I've actually started selling some shirts, and it blows my mind that somebody actually likes my book enough that they want to go buy a shirt. It's such a cool feeling.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, Kaw is such a cool character. Because I picked up that book. I mean, that little jam piece you did with the barbarians. I mean, it's like you were channeling all those characters when you made Kaw. So I mean, that was a perfect piece.
I just love doing that one, and right now I'm doing one. I've been doing it every once in a while on my art stream of just like 80s heroes instead of just like barbarians. And it has become this gigantic, massive wraparound cover, and it has everything from like the Ghostbusters to Godzilla and Voltron and Inspector Gadget and He-Man and Grape Ape and like all these characters that we love from the 80s, all the way down to like the $6 Million Man, who technically is 70s, but I don't care. It's become this gigantic monster. My flatter is going to kill me when I send it to her to color.
Hey man, I mean, I'm an '80s kid, so I mean, everything you just mentioned is stuff I grew up with, and I used to have a pop culture YouTube channel because I just love pop culture and grew up with it, and so even the stuff that's like you say, like I guess of course the largest chunk was in the 80s, right? Because it was the whole, basically, let's create a 30-minute cartoon that's essentially a 30-minute commercial for kids, and it worked, because some of my friends that are adults now are still pouring money into Hasbro that constantly is bringing back G.I. Joe stuff and Transformers and whatever else that they have had their
I still love Thundercats and He-Man and stuff so much, and like you can't see it, but there's a He-Man sword behind these comics back there on the wall.
Yeah, I've seen it on your streams.
Oh man, I love it. I enjoy it so much, and and that's the thing, like those ideas like Thundercats and He-Man and Tiger Sharks and Thundar the Barbarian and Star Wars, like that ignited my imagination when I was a kid and made me want to start making my own stories and my own worlds. And the idea that I could possibly do that for anybody else is exciting. Like that's half the reason that I do this. And like when I did Green Zone, everybody I showed it to instantly started coming up with characters or storyline ideas, or like one dude wrote me a whole like monologue script that I ended up using in my Kickstarter video because his monologue was so much better than anything I had come up with. And
Hmm.
like the fact that it spurs other people's imaginations, man, that is the biggest high in the world. You've got
Oh yeah.
some comics coming out that are really cool that have been inspiring my own imagination. I'm working on a variant cover right now that's featuring both of the books that you've got going on. Tell us a little bit about it, because I'm already a fan, but let everybody else know what's going on.
Sure. Yeah. So I grabbed the originals here because the book that we have coming to Kickstarter, there is not a physical version yet. It is complete though. It's just a matter of getting it printed. But basically, the first comic we ever published was this one right here. It's a story called How to Hunt a Hero. It's by me and my friend Roy.
Oh, sorry. I hit the wrong button. Sorry, I was going for that button.
It's all right. um, so we literally have been working on this since college, and it's been we've tried to do it as a web comic. We've tried to do it as a graphic novel. One time, I even learned how to write like a cartoon script. So 9 cartoon scripts exist of this idea. And basically, what it was originally was, we had this our main character's named Joe, and he was kind of like an amalgamation of me and Roy, like all the nerdy stuff that we like. Joe likes comics, he likes collecting toys, he likes video games. I mean, it was pretty much just us in college, and that's why we gravitated toward each other when we became friends. And at first, it used to be called Average Joe because it was going to center around Joe, and it was a very traditional um, superhero origin story. He gets these powers and he starts trying to figure out what it is that how he got them. And Roy wanted to have the aspect of you know Joe had this girlfriend named Valerie that whenever he was around, powers didn't work. The only thing was, for years we like never really had a reason why. Like we were like, well, maybe it's just a confidence thing or whatever. um, so it stayed that way forever and ever. And then when the pandemic hit, um, we were like, okay, everybody has a lot more time on their hands. Do we want to like really seriously try this? And I had previously made friends with Chuck Pino, who I know you're friends with as well.
Oh yeah,
And
I love Chuck.
yeah, Chuck is awesome. Everybody loves Chuck. I always told him, if somebody doesn't love you, tell them to come talk to me because they're crazy. Because he was so helpful, and he showed me Comics Wellspring, and so I got Roy the templates for how to do it. And so he got to work on it. We did their bare minimum. We did the lowest amount, which was an 8-pager that they would allow to print. We were like, okay, we can handle printing 25 copies. If nobody buys them, we'll split them. I'll get 12, you get 13. but um, but anyway, so my wife and I used to own a comic and game shop here in our town. We ran it for 2 years, and then we ended up selling it, thankfully, a whole year before the pandemic. So that was kind of a blessing in disguise. We didn't have to try to save the store in the middle of the pandemic, but we kept the name, we kept the LLC, we kept using Square, which was our payment processing. So Square allows you to do a free website as part of using their service. So I set it up. I put the comic up there. We just did a traditional like pre-order style. We're like, hey, for the next month or whatever, we're going to be taking orders for this, and that way, we sent Comics Wellspring an order, I think initially of like 130 books, and then sold those, and then then we sold like another 25. So I remember all in all it was 155 books. So we're like, okay, we're going to call that a win, right? Even though it was only friends and family, because that's usually for most people's experience with making comics in the indie scene. I've always heard them say, yeah, you're always going to start with your friends and your family first, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you know, thankfully a lot of people that we knew from the store did stay friends after with us, or at least kept following us. So a lot of that was happening as well. So, you know, we were like, okay, you know, we kind of proved to ourselves we could do this now, right? And then, you know, 2022 for us, unfortunately, was almost like 2020 repeat. It was just not a good year. We were trying to get things going for another comic, and it just never happened, and never happened. And then fast forward to 2023, when you know, the con circuits started coming back, and we were like, you know, okay, you know, now COVID's not gone, but it's died down enough to where it's like people are trying to go out again. And it's like, are we going to try it too? So we had a convention here in New Braunfels called Hill Country Comic Con, and we're like, so it's nice and close. It's literally 5 minutes from my house. I can literally drive over there, set up a booth, come back home, you know, because we have a 2-year-old. So I was like, you know,
nice.
that way I don't have to leave my wife alone with him for too long. And so what we did then is Roy took that original issue that he made, and he put a new cover on it, which is this one right here. This was actually the con exclusive that we offered of Ava with her face exposed, and I haven't even gone into who Ava is yet, but I will. So we essentially relabeled this one as issue 0 just to make it easier for new readers to be like, okay, that's where you start, right? And then so this one was already fully colored. Roy had originally lettered it, but by that time I had gotten to know Al Sparrow, who does lettering, and so he helped us out and redid the lettering, made it look a lot more professional. And then Roy actually had started on issue 1. He wasn't done yet, but he got 8 pages out. So we had an issue 1 preview that we had ready for the con. So we had a couple of books ready to go, and so the story changed for us when we were like, you know, by that point, 20 years later, it was like the origin story has been done to death at this point, you know, because so many people have seen it with all the Marvel movies and the DC movies and whatnot. And so we were like, at some point, Roy had suggested that we do Ava as music stopped. I was like, did I do that we do more of like a hunter, and that she was gonna no connections. Can you hear me, Fish?
Yeah, I can hear you and I can see you. So
okay.
I think we're good for now. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, I got that weird message again. So just flag me down, like wave your hands or something. Yeah. Anyway, so Roy really likes like cryptids, which are like, you know, the fictional people believe in, like Bigfoot and Loch Ness Monster, the Yeti, things like that. So I wanted to incorporate that into the story, and I was like, well, you know, Ava, our antagonist is this rich person. She's younger. She's in college with them. We put the setting in college, and so we made it to where she essentially at a young age, like, just learns how to start hunting these things, and uses she's essentially almost like an evil Batman. Like, she's using all her dad's money, because she has no mother, to fund this. And he is just one of those, you know, disconnected parents, because he's so busy making money that he's like, whatever, like just go occupy yourself. Instead of giving her a quarter.
Here's some money to throw at the problem. Yeah,
exactly. So she, you know, she kind of has that Batman experience a little bit, to where she uses that money while she's young to travel the world, to learn how to hunt, to study under other masters. I mean, like I said, basically kind of like an evil Batman. So
Mm-hmm.
by the time she gets, she had no intention of going to college, but by that time she had pretty much felt like she had captured everything. And she has below her mansion, she has this like huge containment system, and she'll experiment on them. She'll have them fight each other. She's not a good person. Like that's why she's the antagonist of our story. Um, but she's still interesting because when she met Joe, she fell for him, but he was already taken. And for her, it's more of like the challenge, right? It's not that she's like dumbstruck in love, like, oh, I've got to have him. It's more like, okay, you say I can't have that, I'll show you. So
if I can catch a Bigfoot, I can catch a man.
yeah, exactly. There's a t-shirt for you. But yeah, so she knows that Joe loves comics and all that stuff. So she finds a way to essentially extract the powers of each of her cryptids, that she finds that they all have certain abilities. Like Bigfoot has super strength. The Yeti has ice powers, things like that. I mean, this is the part where it's comics, right? We can have fun. We can do pseudoscience and whatnot. And so she secretly infuses him with all the powers of the cryptids, so essentially making the world's first superhero. So, but of course she does this without him knowing, because her whole plan is that she's got this whole thing she calls the hero experiment, and she's building this narrative of first, she lets him discover his powers. He's got a couple of best friends that are just as nerdy as him, and she already knows that they're gonna support him, and they're gonna like do the classic, okay, let's find out how you got these powers, let's do the training montage. Like she's controlling all that. And she's got the plan to where she'll send a cryptid at a time to challenge him and start opening up his mind to like what is going on, like from his point of view, like I got superpowers now, Bigfoot's attacking me, like what is happening here. And then even to the point to where like one of the ways she's able to capture these things is, kind of, I was talking about her being kind of like an evil Batman. Well, there's a little bit of Iron Man thrown in there too, because she's able to, oh, you found them. Cool.
Absolutely. For those that weren't in on the conversation, we were talking about it the other day, and I knew he had sent me the books to look over, and I could not find them. That's because I left them in the nice mailer so I wouldn't forget them. They wouldn't get damaged or get lost, and they'd be safe, and I know where they are. And this is the exact same mailer that my new Virgil stickers came in, and the two were on opposite sides of the room. I'd look over here, I'd be like, no, those are the Virgil stickers. And then I'd look over here, no, those are the Virgil stickers. Never connected that there were two containers that looked identical until I ended up moving stuff around looking for them. I stacked them next to each other, and I was like, wait a minute, I shouldn't have two of those. Absolutely. It was right. It was actually right here behind me the whole time we were talking. I was looking for it.
I told you it would be.
Absolutely.
But yeah, so the way she's able to capture these things is she essentially creates different types of armor. That was actually her first one, and each time, like with her initial fight with Bigfoot in that first armor, she just barely beat him. It cost her her suit, a broken arm, like all kinds of stuff. So we wanted to also add that aspect into where she's not like oh, real quick, Fish, I've got a friend trying to get in, and it says it's not letting him in. Is that the right link?
Letting him onto the show or letting him watch?
Yeah.
The link I sent you will bring people right here backstage.
Yeah, no, it's the other one that you sent me yesterday. The one for YouTube.
That one should be taking them to the show. Let me check.
Yeah, because I'll send it to you. This is what his screen looks like. I just sent it to you.
Okay, there's two different ones. I don't know why it did that. There's two different ones. All right. Yeah. Here, I will resend you. For some reason, it posted it twice on my YouTube page when it set it up. So I probably sent you the link to the one that's not playing, and the other one is. So I just sent you the link to the other one. So hopefully that will help. Or you can go to Mr. Fish Comics on YouTube and go to my lives, and it'll be in there. One of them is playing, and one of them is not. They're both labeled
Okay.
episode 62.
Here, I'll share that new link with people. Let's see if people come in at the last minute.
I tell you, Sarah has it right there. She says it always posts twice, and I think it might be a restream thing. I've seen it on Agents of Geekdom streams too. We should dig into that and see what's going on. Like, I haven't had trouble with it doing it on Restream until just recently, but also recently, Restream has been doing a whole lot of really weird things on me, and like they have changed their whole. They've added like this. When I go to log into the show, they've added this whole animation, and that animation sometimes takes 5 or 10 minutes to load through, and that's ridiculous. It's not worth that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
All right,
that's my
good
friend
deal.
Philip. Yeah, he was struggling trying to get in. But
I apologize,
so
man. Don't want to make it hard for folks to get in and watch. That's not helpful.
it's cool. I just posted it on Facebook too. So
Good deal. Thank you.
but they can watch after the fact though, right? Because
Oh,
it
yeah.
replays the recorded version.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, yeah. So like we were talking about with Ava, you know, she basically sets up this whole narrative, and so we were just talking about her armor. Like I said, she comes up with different ones every time she either barely makes it or you know, if she loses against the cryptids. Of course, she goes back and she learns and she redoes her armor and tries to go back and capture them again. You know, we wanted to add that aspect of the character too, to where it's not like convenient that she's able to beat every single one on the first try, you know.
Mhm.
um, so by the time we get to the story that we're telling now, she's like on one of her top tier armors, and so so she decides that once she's taken him through the first gauntlet of cryptids for him to fight, that she will essentially become his arch nemesis, and she's going to call herself the Dark Wraith, and she's going to create this kind of like legend, you know, of popping up around town. And you know, of course, she knows. I mean, she's so smart, and she knows the pattern of these things, you know, because she watched all these movies with Joe and listened to his stories about comics, and she's like, you know, that'll be the thing. It escalates, right? They're now
Mhm.
that they see he has an arch nemesis, you know, now they're gonna push him to be like, well, now you need a costume, you know, you gotta. And Joe's friends, best friends, are named Pete and Jerry. Jerry's like the one that's like super into this. Like he's the one that you'll see on the cover of cover A of the Kickstarter. He makes himself a sidekick costume, and like he's all into it. He's like the cheerleader for Joe, right? And Pete, on the other hand, is the voice of reason. Like he likes all that stuff and he hangs out, but he's the one who's always saying like, why aren't we calling the police? Like, why aren't we like, why
Like,
aren't
somebody go get hurt.
yeah, like, and so I tried to create that dynamic when I'm writing it. And you know, Roy, you of course did a great job in designing these characters. And like when he does the expressions for Jerry, Jerry's actually based on a real life friend of ours who passed away. So this is kind of like an homage to him. He's actually going to appear in 2 different stories in the book. But yeah, it's just that thing, because yeah, I always found it easier when you have somebody who's kind of like the audience member, and that's Pete. saying, why aren't you guys doing this, or why you realize this
Mhm.
realizes this is a stupid idea, right? you know, and it almost gives the character permission to proceed at that point because it's already been addressed. So, um,
Yeah, it addresses all those issues. Like, this isn't a comic book, right? Like, somebody could really get killed,
yeah,
and because it's all fun and games in a story, but like, I got to worry about paying for medical bills and stuff. Like, if I fall off a roof, that's a big deal. I'm not gonna just bounce off of that like Spider-Man will. And it's good to have somebody out there that can address that stuff and deal with it.
yeah. My friend Philip here
It's
says,
good
audience surrogates are great for exposition. That's smart storytelling. Thank you, Philip. Philip gets to hear me and Roy banter through Messenger all the time because we've got a messenger where the three of us, and so he gets to, because he's Philip's, what are you, Philip, about maybe 10 years younger than us, which I like hearing different people's perspective, especially on pop culture, and Philip loves pop culture too. So it's like, he did not grow up with the 80s cartoons we talked about earlier. He grew up with the 90s stuff, which for me, thankfully, I've always loved all this stuff. So no matter how old I got, I was still watching, and
Mhm.
but yeah, it's fun to banter into something like that. He says. He says the way we carry on. He's like, no, y'all are like 20 years older than me. Like y'all are in the nursing home already arguing the way it sounds sometimes.
Oh, I feel you on that. Like, everybody on 5 Star Fridays, the podcast I'm on Friday nights, everybody's like, yeah, I grew up on this when I was a kid, sitting, eating my cereal. I'm like, dude, I was in college when that cartoon came on.
Well, one of my friends, her daughter is like 21, and the other day she posted that she saw the Dragon's Lair video game in an arcade, and she posted it, and she goes, oh look, it's the game they were playing in Stranger Things. And I said, you've made me feel so old when you said that, because I simply would have just said, hey, it's Dragon's Lair. But it's funny, but at the same time it's like, well, I'm glad that there's still a way for them to see it and enjoy it in some capacity, even though that game is one of the hardest games of all time. But but yeah, so what Fish is working on there is one of the variant covers to our Kickstarter book, which is called Child's Play Comics #0. And it's the idea of that came, you'll see cover A is actually an homage to Image Zero, which was from Image Comics back in 1993, exactly 30 years ago. And yeah, exactly. But it was just the cover was like a jam cover of all the Image creators, each putting their one of their characters on there. So we liked that idea. Since we've done a couple of different comics, so we did a jam piece of our characters in that same style. We had artists Carl. Philip says, "There's the old." But she. It was funny too when I got Carla's definitely a lot younger than me, but it was funny when I was explaining to her about Image Zero. I'm like, have you seen it? Do you know Image Comics? She's like, no, not really. So I had to kind of show her what it was. But she's a phenomenal artist from Chile. She's actually the one who's doing our other book, which I'll show here in a second. But yeah, it's just fun to finally have something out there. Like I said, Child's Play Comic, a collection, because it's kind of like our way to come to Kickstarter and be like, hey, look, we've actually made some comics outside of Kickstarter, so we know what we're doing. And since you guys have no idea who we are, here's a nice little affordable collection so you can kind of get to know us and our projects and whatnot. So that was the inspiration behind creating Child's Play Comic 0 for Kickstarter. So the other one that we have here is the one that me and my wife worked on. So at our store, we had a little mascot named Malia Mayhem, and she is actually essentially a kid version of my wife. My wife loves tabletop, she loves cosplay, and so we came up with this whole like backstory for her before we even opened the store. And we actually had a friend of ours create like a little, basically a one-page comic, like 6 panels, just an origin story for her. And I printed it up on a poster and put it up in the store. And she was in all our marketing. I mean, she's still there. You can clearly see on my shirt she's in the logo for Child's Play Comics, because the store was actually called Child's Play Games and Geekery, and that's the name of the LLC. So you'll still see the name out there. And we kind of left it open-ended because my wife still likes tabletop games. We play them. She would very much love to do one eventually. It just it's its own set of work. Apart from making comics is definitely work, and making a tabletop game is just as much work. So when Roy and our comic was successful, well, my wife and I were like, well, do we want to try getting one done for Malia? Because we always, even when we had the store, it was always the dream that she would have her own comic as well. So when we went to Hill Country Comic Con, we took those 2 issues of How to Hunt a Hero, but we actually contracted artist Dave Beatty, who's done a lot of work for DC and Marvel, and he's been in the industry since the 80s as well. I actually got to know Dave because I used to help run a Wildstorm podcast, and when DC launched the New 52, Dave got on to the Grifter title, and Grifter's one of my favorite characters, and so we actually got him to come on the podcast and interview him. He was super nice, and he was more than willing to do this for us. Now this one ended up being a preview, and so I did this one a little bit differently because Dave had finished some of the pages, but they were still in black and white. I know it's hard to see because of the light, but I actually put the script on one side and the page on the other. So
Cool.
So this one, especially at Hill Country Comic Con, whenever we were marketing it, Hill Country Comic Con is very family oriented, very family friendly, and so we were showing the parents that this essentially kind of shows your child a little bit of behind the scenes of how a comic's made, because you can see the script on one side and you can look at the page on the other and see how it translates, how the word balloons are added with the dialogue, how the description that I put in there, Dave took that and brought life to it, obviously, right? And that was a big hit at the convention. We sold out of all our books, and even showed them here towards the end. You do like character bios and stuff like that. So yeah, that ended up being a big hit, and it was just kind of one of those last minute decisions. I didn't ever plan the book to be that, but that ended up being a nice preview. So then, like I mentioned earlier, I found artist Carla Diaz on DeviantArt because I was searching for art that was more like anime inspired, and I found she had done work for Dark Horse. Are you familiar with artist Adam Warren?
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm so bad with names. I could have
It's okay.
10 books of his and I wouldn't realize.
Yeah, no worries. He did a lot of work in the 90s, and his creator-owned book that's pretty well known is called Empowered, and she
Dude!
see
Okay, see that? Yes, I do have that. I freaking love it. See, you gotta hit the part that my brain remembers.
the connection.
Oh, dude. His faces and his lips. Like, I could study the way he does lips for the rest of my life. Like, they are so amazing. It's such a weird thing to be so specific on, but like on his artwork, I bought a whole freaking giant graphic novel just for the way he draws faces.
No, really.
To study it and look at it. I freaking love it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, yeah, he's very expressive. It's obviously that he has a lot of anime and manga influence. So she did a 3-issue miniseries for him through Dark Horse, and her style was pretty much matched his almost dead on. And so I reached out to her, and she's actually from Chile. So I've never worked with an artist from overseas before, so I was a little nervous. But we did a meeting like this, where we can actually talk, not just through email. And she was very nice, and was more than willing to help us out. And we were able to afford her, so that was a good thing, because comics can get real expensive real quick. But yeah,
Real quick.
so she helped put together Malia Mayhem #0 for us. It's a little 8-pager that essentially, so in the preview issue, I had Dave do this page that's an insert at the beginning, and my idea was this is kind of like those old previously on, like on a cartoon, except this is her origin story told in one page. So it's kind of like what we had up at our old store. It's just updated with more details. And just to kind of go over her origin real quick. So in going with the tabletop theme, she, like I said, she loves to go to Comic Day all by itself, and there's like a little hand that's holding a little red D20, and it starts glowing, so she goes to check it out, and when she touches it, it automatically transports her to this world that we call the Tabletopian realm. And it's essentially a world where all the tabletop games that we are playing here in the real world, there's a world for them there, where the characters are real, they have lives, things like that. It's all very much based on the inspiration for that was partially the old Dungeons and Dragons cartoon from the 80s, because I love that idea of these teenagers being sucked into that world, and they basically just have these adventures, and their goal is to try to get home, right? And that was mixed in with a little bit of the never-ending story, which I like that idea that in the never-ending story, in the real world, as people stop believing, then the world of Fantasia starts to fall apart. So I kind of took those two ideas and combined them for the Tabletopian realm. Is that like, so
That's so traumatic for a kid.
oh, I know, right? Yeah, the 80s was very traumatic
my
with
God.
the stuff that we liked, cartoons and movies and stuff. But anyway, it was like okay, so Sarah, one of her friends who also loved tabletop, like they would always love to troll each other. Like they would mess with each other so bad. Like thankfully it never led to anybody getting like legitimately upset, but they would find ways how to essentially break a game to mess with each other. So that's where she would always say, well, stop trolling me. So she was like, well, what if we have a character that we call Troll, and his whole deal is that he is in there and he's messing up the games, and his interference in the games is causing people in the real world to lose for no reason. Like if you've ever been playing a game and somebody's like, oh, this game is broken, or they find something wrong with it, we were like, well, this could be the explanation of why something's wrong, because there's some sort of force or something that's messing with the game and you can't see it. And
the game was fine. He's in there messing with it. That's
exactly, yeah. Yeah, and it's that idea that like if people stop playing the game, of course in the real world sales decline and the game goes away, right? But it was that same idea like Fantasia, that it's like, well, what happens in that world to those people if people stop playing their game? Their whole existence relies on people playing their game. Of course they have no idea. They don't get that. So that was where that whole idea came from, and it was such a cool template to just be like, okay, that's the idea. So now we can literally insert any game that we can think of, right? So like in this first one, she goes to a world that's inspired by Dungeons and Dragons, and she kind of learns real quick. This one was a lot shorter, so I had to kind of write it a lot faster, but it kind of worked out. It's one of those things, sometimes when you're limited by money, you got to get creative in the space that you're allowed. So that's kind of what happened with this one, is that it ended up being a very fast-paced origin, but I think it tells the story quick and fun, and you get the point, you understand. Because issue 1, which is what Dave created the preview off of, that one is a full 22 pages. You know, there's more time to breathe. There's more time to introduce concepts and whatnot. And so now this was kind of like a happy accident. Like, you know, we didn't really plan to have an issue 0, and it worked out. And then having Carla was doing it specifically so I could put it inside Child's Play Comic 0 on Kickstarter. That's why there was no official cover except for the Image 0 homage she did, which wouldn't have made sense for this. So this, I had to get creative, and I had to apologize to her. I was like, look, I just want to let you know I'm not trying to like cheat you out of not doing a cover. It literally is a money issue at this point. So I'm going to have to grab this awesome image you did of Malia and make it a cover. And she was fine with that. But you know, you gotta adapt, right? Adapt and overcome. So
it happens, man.
But yeah, everyone so far has loved this. They love the art style, and so it's been really cool that it came together like this. And she's actually going to work on issue 1 for us coming next year. So, and that'll be another Kickstarter project.
Thank you for hanging out with us, Juan, and thank you for your order on TikTok. I just got it out in the mailbox, ready to go today, so it should be getting to you very soon. Thank you very much for that.
Yeah, Ka is awesome.
Oh man,
unfortunately, I didn't have the funds at the time to get the that Barbarian print, but that was pretty awesome too. Like I said, it has all the classic characters, a lot of stuff in there that, I mean, I'm pretty sure you had Bobby from Dungeons and Dragons in there.
Oh yeah, Bobby was in there. Thundar the Barbarian, He-Man, and like his battle damage armor, like somebody suggested.
I love that you picked that one. Yeah, I love that you picked that one.
And then when you did him, like I had to put Skeletor with that squirting dragon over his shoulder, just because, like, to me that was one of the most obscure ones that they did, and I loved it, man. All right, well, I'm glad you're learning some stuff from us, man. Like that's cool. My whole thing is to try and share as much information as I can, and like I've learned a lot of things the hard way as I went. And I'm all about sharing as much of that information as I can. Like the first time I did a Kickstarter, I think I was telling Joe this when we talked earlier. The first time I launched my Kickstarter for T-Man and Hyperstrike, my biggest fear was that once I clicked that launch button on Kickstarter, it was going to go viral. And I was worried about, like, I was doing all the math, like, does everything work out if, you know, I sell $10,000 of the single issue? Or what if I get $50,000 in order for the swag pack with all the t-shirts? Like, does that still math out? Turns out that wasn't the problem I had to worry about. I had to worry about getting the word out so people knew that it was there to go buy it. 6 months after the Kickstarter, I would have people seeing a post on Facebook and be like, oh, is this Kickstarter still going? I'd love to get the book. And I was like, no, Kickstarter's long gone, but I got you on books. If you want one, I'll sell you.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of work. I mean, and thank you, Juan. I appreciate that you included me in saying learning stuff today. That makes me feel like I know what I'm talking about. So, and we don't want that.
Every step of the way, everything we do makes us a little bit smarter and a little bit better, and it's all about growing and improving and all of that stuff, you know. Because
I do appreciate that, and of course appreciate Fish here, because I mean, I've tried to learn from everybody I can from the indie scene, and Fish is one of the best. So
I try and do what I can, because, you know, it takes so little time to be helpful and, you know, give a little advice and share a little bit about what you've learned along the way. And like, why not take a minute and do that? One thing I wanted to ask to be sure, and I should have probably asked this earlier before I got this far along in the illustration, is this the Child's Play title that you're planning on going with, or do you have something else in mind for this cover? I'm just wanting to make sure I leave enough room for it.
Oh, as far as the logo?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah, go and leave some room, because we've actually been playing around with different logos because that one that you grabbed right there is from cover A,
Hmm.
and that one, my friend Jesse, who I'm actually gonna go into talking about next, he um, he actually works for Gearbox, and so he's been in the video game industry for over 20 years at this point. So he's been
Awesome.
helping me a lot. And so when I showed him the image zero cover, he was like, "Well, I can match images font that they used now from 30 years ago."
And that's
And
the
I was like,
thing. Like,
"Really?"
I could tell it was definitely going to match that. So I figured it
Mhm.
might not be what you're planning on going with full time, but I figured it also takes up a good chunk of the top. So it gave me something to play with to remember what was up there.
Oh yeah,
But yeah,
no, that's fine.
all right,
You can
good
use
deal.
it as a placeholder. So, but yeah, I was just saying that to say that he's actually helped me come up with some of the other logos. So one of the ones that I'll start showcasing these next week. I mean, they'll be, of course, you'll be able to see them live when we go live on October 1st. But I wanted to, continue to build some hype next week, and I'm going to do a cover reveal a day. That's why I'm glad we're going to have yours ready to go, because I kind of want to do them in order A, B, C, D. And one of them is from a local artist here in Austin named Ben Bender, who has an online comic.
That's a heck of a name. I love that.
Yeah, do what?
Sorry, completely off subject, but I love that name.
Yeah, no, it's his real name. He does a comic called The Littlest Viking, and he has a style very reminiscent of Bill Watterson from Calvin and Hobbes. And so I thankfully got him to do one of our variant covers too. And so my friend Jesse was able to match the Calvin and Hobbes logo for that to say Child's Play Comic Zero.
Oh yeah, that one
And
came out looking nice.
yeah, so that one came out to be a lot of fun. So yeah, once you're done with yours, he said he's gonna we'll look at it together, and we'll try to figure out like what logo looks best for that.
Ben Bid is an awesome name. Like I have people all the time think that like my name's made up or something, and I'm like, no, it's just short for Fisher. But nobody ever calls me that, you know. My mama didn't call me Fisher; she always called me Fish. So I just like, unless I'm getting pulled over for speeding or something, like nobody ever called me Fisher.
Hmm. Oh, hi, Joelle. That's my cousin Joelle, who also got into comic making the same time I did. He's got a book out there called Mari Selinsky and the Wonder Kitty, which is going to change here soon to the Improbable Girl. Put the name up there. I'm sorry, Joelle, it's escaping me. You got me so used to saying Mari Selinsky that I haven't learned the new. Oh, I've got his new issues here. Hold on one second. Here they
I
are.
was gonna say I've got Improbable Girl
Yeah, I was
right
about
here
to say,
too.
yeah, I've got, here you go. Yeah, the Improbable Girl and the Wonder Kitty. And so this cover he did was actually by Don Simpson, which was an amazing connection that he made. But Joelle
A
is
beautiful cover.
such a charismatic guy. I love that we've grown up together, and we used to make comics just for fun in high school, and he's been bugging me to try to like update those so they can be good for the public. And I'm like, there's so many in jokes in that, and there's people in there, that we were making fun of, that I don't think they want to figure out that it's them. So I don't know that we can do that. um oh
I can
good,
feel that. I feel that. Yeah.
good. Juan has a really good question. He says, when you have other artists do your variants, do you give them the idea for the look, or do you allow them to have creative control? So yeah, that's always a hard one, right? So obviously, like with
Hmm.
cover A, when I showed it to Carla, I was like, well, here's it's an homage cover, right? So it's like, the most creativeness, I guess you could say, she had is that it's in her style. So that one was more of a director to do this, right? With Ben, he did ask me. He was like, well, what do you want them doing? And so um I found a couple of images that Scotty Young had done, because he's also does that kind of cute, fun style. And
Hmm.
there's an image that Scotty Young did of for Star Wars, where it shows the Wampa like this, like running at Obi-Wan and Anakin, and they're all like in, the little chibi forms. And but anyway, I was like, well, we can keep it simple. We can just show Troll chasing Malia, right? And so with that one, that's about as much direction as I gave him. And he kind of just kept it to that. He did say, I have a couple of different ideas, but in the end, he pretty much stayed to that. Now with let's see, so that now obviously with Fish here, we did talk about some ideas. And it's always hard to, because that's why I sent Fish the comics, so you could kind of read and get a sense of the characters and whatnot, because that's always important to do with the artist too, because you got to think of it from their point of view. Like, you're literally just dumping these characters in the artist's lap and say, hey, do something with these things, and
if you can have a chance to get to know the characters a little bit first and get a feel for them, it really helps spur my creativity to try and make the coolest thing out of it that I can.
Mm-hmm.
So, I like that. I enjoy that when people give me this shot.
Yeah. So I guess to answer your question, Juan, it's a little bit of both, because you'll see next week when we reveal cover D, which actually is by artist Eddie Nunez, which if you don't know who that is, type in his name and all kinds of cool art's going to come up. He's done a lot of work. He got hired through Wildstorm through DC in the early 2000s, and he does a lot of awesome work. Bye, Joelle. Thanks for stopping by. He did a lot of work for the DC Universe Online game, and lately he's done a lot of cool Ninja Turtle stuff. He's got some awesome prints. So with him, actually, my friend mentioning that one, I think he pretty much gave Eddie free reign on that one. He just handed over what Ava looks like, and Eddie kind of came up with this pose of, well, she's a hunter, whatever. Like, you can tell with Eddie's interpretation, he had probably the least amount of information, because she looks more like a hunter, like she's gonna kill something, but she doesn't ever kill these cryptids, And you'll see he put like bullet holes in the wall behind her and stuff. So, and she's a lot more physically fit in his depiction of her. So it's funny, because it's one of those, like, sometimes, yeah, you can just give the artist free reign, especially if you don't really have an idea. With me, I usually have a good idea, only because I've read comics for so long that even if I have an idea and I don't want them to copy it exactly, I can at least show them a cover and say, this is kind of what I was thinking. And so one of the covers for Malia Mayhem #1 that occur, I had found an X-Men cover that was kind of an obscure one. It just simply shows, I think it's Cyclops and Jean Grey, and they're kind of like it's an overhead, a bird's eye view of them in the middle of a crowd of, like, I don't know if it was ninjas or something that was like just completely surrounding them. And I essentially wanted the artist to copy that, but it was a little much for her. So she pulled the perspective down, and she put Malia in the middle, and she put the other characters that are kind of crowding around her. So in that case, I did let the artist have some more free reign, because it was a big ask for her in that case. So I was like, well, you can adapt it then. So again, it's a little bit of both. I know it's a long discussion to answer your question.
Well, and it changes a lot depending on the artist that you're going with.
Mm-hmm.
And like one thing, like you kind of mentioned there, like knowing your limitations is a big thing that a lot of artists either don't have or won't admit that they've got, and like, will try to take bites out of things that they're just not ready to take a bite out of yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it won't come out looking as good as if they were honest and said, like, well, actually, it would come out a lot better if I could stick in my wheelhouse here. And in that case, like, that's good information to have. It's not something to be afraid of. Like, if you're not good at, I don't know, doing crowds, then doing a scene that's like looking down on a parade of thousands of people is probably not a good thing to ask this new artist to be doing.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, just getting into the indie comic scene has been really cool in general. Just meeting people like you, and like I said, I got to meet. I mean, it's so funny. Chuck Pino really is a nexus. Like
Oh
he
man,
just
yeah.
so in fact, I was telling my friends Roy and Jesse who were working on this comic, I was like, I need to create like a map, almost like a family tree, right? And Chuck is definitely going to be at the center because so many people that I know are branch off from him. And
Oh man,
uh,
I owe my whole career to one friend that I made the first time I got a paying gig in indie comics. I was inking an obscure little comic from Deviant Art that a bunch of friends had put together. But the letterer on that job, we ended up becoming friends, and he liked my work and started hitting me up to ink some things that he had other people draw. And then when he realized that my original art was good, he had me start drawing things and then start coloring them. And then he showed that off to all his friends. And then I had 5 years of solid work from people that were like, dude, this is awesome. And because he's such a nice guy like Chuck, people trust my buddy Eric. And if he says Fish is a good dude to work with, well, then Fish is a good dude to work with.
mhm,
And I was booked solid for the next few years.
nice. Yeah, yeah. My friend Joelle was actually the one that showed me your stuff first because I had seen Green Zone in passing. I don't know if Chuck had shared it or what, but that was like, it's so funny. I make mental notes of some of the comics that were out when I was just getting into this, and Green Zone's definitely
Hmm.
there. Like, I remember seeing Virgil, right? That's your main character, or
Yeah.
yeah. I remember seeing him. I'm like, oh, it's a cool character, but I just, it's kind of like when you walk into the store and you just taking everything in. That's what Green Zone is for me. It's like I was just kind of getting to know. Okay, oh, this dude's name is Fish. Okay, that's cool. So, but thankfully, by the time I got to know more about you, that's when you released Caw, and I was like, okay, I'm not missing out on Caw. So, um, real quick, Juan has a question. He says, "Do you guys design your own shirts? Or do you have a shirt guy?" As far as design, so this one that I'm wearing is just the logo of our company, and I did have a graphic designer make it, and that's just the logo that I grab and I put on the covers of the books. You'll actually see an updated version. When Fish grabbed the logo, he also grabbed the new version of this logo because we're going to be changing and updating it. But let's see, for this one, this was a local shirt creator. That's right, because when we had our retail store, there's a local shirt creator store that was really good about keeping us in stock, and they're really fast, and their shirts are always quality. And oh, I don't want to forget. So there is a third aspect to our book for Child's Play Comic Zero. I've mentioned my friend Jesse a couple times. He's in the video game industry. He actually has a company called Dinosaur Entertainment, and so over the past few years, he has been working on his own stuff, but he's also been like contracting out. So they've worked on like Mutant Football League, Super Lucky's Tale is another one they've worked on. There's a lot of different games
Cool.
that they've worked on. I actually have a page that's going to be in the book that showcases a lot of their stuff. And so him and Roy have actually been best friends since high school. And I met Roy first in college, and then I met Jesse because they're best friends. And we've stayed friends for the past, God, it's been over 20 years now, and them even longer, 30. But he's like I said, he works for Gearbox, so he's deep into the video game thing. He's actually in Japan right now, attending a conference. That lucky dog. And so he and Roy have always had this idea for a comic that they called Teen Strike, and it's basically centered around a group of kids, centered where we all grew up, which was South Texas. And it's one of those where it was like, his focus is always like, what is it really like to have powers? Because he feels like whenever they start a story with that idea, they might do a little bit kind of like the beginning of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, when you get to see him at the school. He goes to lunch, and like she almost slips, and he catches her with the super speed and then webs the tray. Like, those little things usually start off in the story, but then they quickly get away from that, and we get into the big supervillain fights, into the world
Hmm.
changing things. So he was like, what if we stay in that simpler part longer, like to where you really see like these kids as they are starting to discover powers. One, it's kind of like a mystery. It's like, well, why is all these kids in this town developing power? Well, not all of them, but like a good chunk of them are. And then when they start figuring it out, it's from a character that's based on Jesse himself. It starts from his kind of point of view. So he kind of sees these things happening, and like when he realizes he has powers, he has two best friends. Roy's in there. It's one of those comics where like real life friends are in it in one capacity or another. Like I'm in it too, and so he has to start deciding, well, do I tell them? And then when he realizes that they have powers too, then it kind of becomes like this club. It's like, okay, well, who else has powers? Like we gotta get everybody in on this. And then as they slowly start uncovering the mystery of like, well, how do they have these powers, and now how do we deal with it? He does kind of take them on those kind of grand adventures, but he always brings it back to, okay, now I got to go back to high school. Now we got to go back to class. Like what is that like? And so that's the aspect of that story that was really compelling. And he's worked really hard to make sure of that balance of, let's not move away from the what is it really like aspect too fast. So that one, he actually found an artist from Colombia, I think, and he's working on it right now, and he plans to kickstart it eventually. But he's actually letting us have the first 10 pages to put in Child's Play Comic Zero as an exclusive look at the book. So that was kind of an extra incentive, because thankfully, like I said, we've had people who have collected each of these issues along the way. So we wanted to add something a little extra, something new, that it's like, okay, well, if you do have these issues, if you do pick this one up, you're going to get an exclusive look at this. So that was kind of a nice little incentive. And, the three of us, like I said, we've kind of worked and talked about this since college. So it's nice we're finally going to put a book out where all three of our names are on it. So that's a dream come true for all three of us. It's just been a little step at a time.
Oh yeah, I love the idea of, like, I wish more people would do comic books based where they're from, because everything being based in New York, or being based in what you imagine New York is like from comic books and TV, when like you live in, I don't know, Montana. I'm tired of that. That's boring. I've seen enough of that. Like, I really want to like see like what would it be like if this was happening in your backyard. I've got a whole story planned out that I would like to do as, like an extra in a Green Zone trade or something, or maybe its own short story. I would like to see what happens in these local towns. Like, if you're born with superpowers, but you're in a small town in Arkansas, and like the most trouble you have is, people drag racing, or, a scuffle down at the Piggly Wiggly. Like, you don't have people trying to rob banks and stuff. Like, what do you do when you live in a boring town with no big buildings to sit on the top of and, mope in the rain? Like, and also, what I'm thinking about doing is having a group of supervillains that couldn't make it in the big city go on a road trip across the country. And so you see them interacting in all these small towns with the local heroes and stuff that usually don't have to deal with anything. And these bad guys are nothing in the big city. But when you get to like small town Arkansas or a little town in Wisconsin, all of a sudden they're a pretty big deal when they show up. And now, some old retired super dude that has never had to do anything has to try and get back into his suit. I just think it's so ripe with interesting storytelling opportunities.
Yeah. Juan says it's funny because I'm from New York, he says. Well, then maybe you can give us a different perspective, Juan. Are you tired of seeing, all these big superhero movies always set in New York or LA or like, Chicago, this different places? Because that's another thing about, like, with Teen Strike, for example. It's a small South Texas town. We all grew up, the three of us grew up in a small South Texas town. There's literally 2,000 people in my hometown, That number has never changed over the past 20, 30 years. And there was 45 people in my graduating class. Every class was around that size. Everybody knew everybody, for better or for worse. And
Mhm.
there's an aspect of that too, of like what, like you just said, like what is it like for people with powers in that kind of situation, to where so when something happens in just normal small town America, everybody knows by the next day. And even worse now with social media. I mean, back then,
Oh
the social
yeah.
media was just people, you know, spreading the word through talking or whatever. Texting wasn't even a thing yet.
And if you mess one thing up in a small town, Von Seal's going to be on the phone next thing you know, and she's going to be calling Lulabelle down the road. And next thing you know, everybody in town knows your business, and your grandma's calling you. What were you doing down there being ridiculous? I told you not to wear that long underwear out in public. Like, oh my God. It would be such a freaking hassle. And like, it would be so hard to be taken seriously as like an adult hero from the people that like you grew up in high school with, and they remember you going through your pimply awkward phase, and you might be the size of a truck now, but they remember when you weighed 46 pounds in like sixth grade, and they're like, dude, shut up, I gotta listen to you. And oh my God, it would be so much fun and such a hassle. And I think it would be such cool storytelling. Katie
Yeah.
says superhero movies would be so much different set in Scotland. The only dramatic thing that happened here in the past 20 years was someone stole our trash can in the middle of the night. Like, okay, in my small town of Valonia, Arkansas, if a cop pulls you over, it is guaranteed every police officer in town is going to show up and line up at that stop. It doesn't matter if your blinker was out or you had a flat tire and he was just letting you know. Every cop is going to show up because it's the only thing going on and there's nothing else for them to do right now. So, like, could you imagine all 6 superheroes from your town show up because you thought you heard a burglar? Turns out it's just a raccoon, but you thought somebody was messing around by the trash cans, and now all the heroes have turned up and made a big stink. Oh my God, that would be such a good story. I don't think we get to see what it's like for the minorities in the city. What it's like seeing Spider-Man in Harlem or Spanish Harlem. Oh yeah, absolutely. It's whitewashed. Yeah, true. Let's see. Sarah said, I would love to see a superhero movie set in rural Scotland. Oh, that would be so freaking cool. Oh my God. I'm telling you, Sarah, that's an idea that y'all need to get working on at Laguna Studios there and put it out. I'd buy it. I'm here to tell you. I'm already on board.
That's awesome that you guys are in Scotland. One of my friends, she was a foreign exchange student for us in high school. She's from Scotland. I still chat with her every now and then with the promise that one day I'm going to go visit her. Just need that little thing called money. So.
Oh yeah, the money's the problem. Like if the airports just weren't so nitpicky about wanting money for tickets, man, I'd be traveling all over the place. But no,
it's either money or time, right? I can start on a little rowboat. I just don't know the time or the endurance. I can make it to Scotland eventually.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just. And I guess maybe that goes with that whole write what you know type of thing, right? Because when we write that setting, since we all grew up in that small town, and to me, South Texas, it's there's a lot of, obviously, because I'm Hispanic, there's a lot of that influence too. So you're going to see that in our writing because all 3 of us are Hispanic. So you're going to see certain things that are just kind of naturally in our culture, and hopefully we present it in a way people can understand it, because it's real nonchalant in the script. They've seen Blue Beetle. I haven't seen the movie yet, but they were telling me that it's got a lot of faithfulness in that to our culture. So I look forward to seeing that eventually. But yeah, it definitely makes it yes, hermano, that's right. Yeah, it makes it more authentic too, because there's so many things growing up in that environment. There's so many things you take for granted, and I guess I always joke with people that one of my favorite movies of all time is Star Wars, and I always joke with people it's because I'm essentially Luke Skywalker. Like, I lived on Tatooine, like that's my hometown, and I went out into the real world, and I got my hand chopped off a couple of times in the real world, and thankfully there was ways to recover from that and keep going, because it's funny when I talk to younger people who are working on this stuff and comics and whatnot, and I always hesitate to give them this encouragement because I'm like, well, next month I'll be 45, and I'm just now really getting into this and really doing it. And not that I'm trying to tell you that you're gonna have to wait that long, because I hope that you don't. I hope if you're younger that you get to do it a lot sooner than I did. But we always talked about that it's the right time when it's the right time, and that's the hardest thing to accept, because like if we did try it, like I said, 20 years ago, and it was a different world back then. It was harder to get things printed. It was harder to decide, obviously the indie comic scene has always existed, but I feel like it's become more accessible. Obviously there's still hurdles and things like that. Man. But it is, I feel like at this time it was easier to try to get into.
The internet has changed so much stuff for us and made it easier. Like, it's easier to connect with other creators and stuff around the world. Like, when I graduated high school, if I didn't end up accidentally working with you at a shop somewhere, I would never know you. Like, unless we bumped into each other, you only met the people around you. So meeting other talented writers and artists and inkers and colorists was hard. That's why I do everything myself now, is because I couldn't find anybody else to work with back in the day, and I just had to get used to doing it all myself. I would have much rather just focused on penciling and let somebody else do this part. Now I love it, but at the time I hated it.
Yeah.
But now we can connect with people around the world. There's digital printers that can print like one copy of this or 1,000 copies of it. They look absolutely professional and high quality. And you can do it at a reasonable price. Like, when I graduated college, I talked with the local newspaper printer about doing my comic that I was wanting to self-publish. And they'd had a real bad experience before with somebody wanting to do a comic. And the only way they would touch it is if I was going to do 5,000 copies for $10,000. And for like a young married dude right out of college, $10,000 might as well have been 10 million at the time.
Yeah.
There was no way I could have done that. But now with crowdfunding and social media and all that stuff, like, you can get past the financial barrier fairly easily and pre-sell to people around the world that you don't know, that you've met through social media that didn't exist back then. This is the time to do it. So, like, I'm always telling young people, like, it has never been better to try and do it than now. And yeah, your first book's probably going to stink, but that's okay. All of our first books suck. That's how you learn. The mistakes you make on that first book, you won't make again. And the mistakes you make on your 10th book, you won't make again. And we get better each time. There's no better teacher than doing it.
Yeah.
And waiting around for some, perfect book that doesn't have any mistakes, you're going to end up being 48 before you end up putting anything out, and you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Get started.
I tell people, like, have you ever, when you made pancakes for the first time, that first pancake looks pretty bad. It might be edible, but it's not,
Absolutely.
not going to look very good. But real quick, Philip said Cthulhu waited millennia before driving men to new heights of madness. Patience is the key.
Exactly.
And Juan was asking
who better to take life advice from than Cthulhu?
Juan was asking if we print books in Spanish, and that he plans to do his in English and Spanish for his issues of Demon Cop. That's a really good idea, Juan. It's something it's crossed my mind. I mean, in How to Hunt a Hero, the main cast is all Hispanic, with the exception of Ava, so it would make sense. And right here, I live in New Braunfels, which San Antonio is just 30 miles south of us. Obviously a huge Hispanic population. I do know Spanish. I haven't practiced it as much since the pandemic because I used to work in a bank, and so I would help Spanish-speaking customers on an almost daily basis. So I would practice more. So I don't know how much in practice I am now because I've been out of it for 3 years. But it's definitely something that if I can achieve it, yeah, I would absolutely put it in Spanish so I could, reach new readers. So
That is something that I realized when I used to do my Tourette's Life cartoon, which was just about my life with Tourette's. It was really a challenge to myself in the beginning just to see if I could keep up with doing some regular artwork because I wanted to go into doing my own comics, but I wasn't sure because I spent like 15 years locked up either in my bed or a wheelchair, and most of the time I couldn't walk, talk, or see because my Tourette's was so severe. I'm doing really good now. Like things are a lot better than they used to be, but uh, it was bad for a long time. So that was my test to see if I could do this and keep up with it or not. And I've had a lot of people take those cartoons and translate them into Spanish or Portuguese
oh, nice.
and turn around and share them. And those got like hundreds of thousands of views. Like, I know there's a huge Spanish speaking market out there. There's, lots of other languages. My problem is not being a native speaker of it. I don't know how to judge if this translation is good or not. And I don't trust like just putting it into Google Translate and hope that it's going to come out accurately portraying the meaning that I want to put into it. And as a writer, I want to make sure it comes off with the same feeling and emotion on the other side as I intended. And I'm not sure how to do that in Spanish yet. I got to find the right translator that I can trust that's fluent in both languages. Because most of the people that have translated like my short cartoons weren't native English speakers. So like they would have to ask me questions about some stuff and our conversations were kind of difficult. I need to find somebody who's fluent in both that can understand, and probably a storyteller that's fluent in both. Because I really want the stories to come across right, but I really want to do it. And it would be an easy enough thing to do with the right partner. It would take a couple of days for me to re-letter everything if I had the right person to help me get it down.
I was going to say, Kyron Silva just came in. I hope you said your name right, because I did back, is it Saw the Lightning Wielder? Did I say it right?
Yeah, it's Saw. It's not spelled that way.
Yeah, it's Saw. I tried to learn it. I was like, yeah. Hi, Kyron. Thanks for joining. I did back Saw, so I'm looking forward to getting that issue. So Child's Play Comic Zero is a Kickstarter comic we have coming up on October 1st. And so we've been printing comics on our own for the last couple of years. And we are collecting them this will be our first Kickstarter. And it's kind of it's kind of like our introduction to the Kickstarter community and whatnot, and kind of our way to show that hey, we have made stuff on our own, and so we're kind of coming to Kickstarter to kind of grow ourselves a little bit, grow in that community. And so the books we've been talking about that are going to be in this collection, the collection is called Child's Play Comic Zero. And so the first book we ever published is called How to Hunt a Hero. And what this one is about is a world where there's a rich person. Her name is Ava, and she basically uses her wealth to go and hunt the cryptids of the world, like Bigfoot, Loch Ness Monster, the Yeti, things like that. And so I guess I've in the stream I've referred to her almost like an evil Batman, like she's using all that wealth for this particular thing. She doesn't kill the cryptid, she collects them. So I guess in that way she's almost like an evil Pokemon collector. But she keeps them to experiment on and to fight them against each other and to learn about them, and finds that they all have abilities and powers. Well, when she goes to college, she meets this guy named Joe, and she realizes that she likes him, but not to the point to where exactly got to catch them all. Not to the point to where she's dumbstruck in love. It's more of a, I want him, but he's already taken. So I'm smart enough to figure out a way how to take him away from that person.
Oh, I hate her so much. I love it.
Yeah, well, that's good. That was funny. One of my friends told me that for the first time she read this issue, and I was like, well, I guess I did my job writing her well, because that's the whole point. And that so she secretly infuses Joe with the power of all her cryptids to essentially make that world's first superhero. And but but so when she does that, she essentially creates this whole narrative to where she's gonna like monitor him and like help him along this journey. Yeah, I see Kyron's thing. Kyron's comment.
Too many times. Too many times.
But she's taken him along this narrative. He has two best friends that she knows are going to help him. They're going to do basically the traditional superhero origin story, and she's going to help manipulate that narrative. She's going to send cryptids after him to fight, and then she also, we were talking about her kind of also being like an evil Iron Man. She has these different suits of armor that she dons, and that's how she's able to defeat these cryptids. And there is times that she's lost against them because she's trying to figure out how to beat them, and she's barely survived encounters with them. So that's why she has to upgrade her armor anytime she loses against a cryptid or barely wins. And so essentially what her plan is that as she builds this narrative for him, she's going to make herself his arch nemesis. And so her plan is at the end of this whole experiment is that she's going to reveal to him, it was me, I granted you your wildest dreams, but I made you a superhero, and then be forever grateful to her. When in reality, I love how Fish said it when I first told him the story. He was like, what a crappy thing to do to somebody, And I'm like,
That's so horrible.
I'm like, that's why she's a good
I
woman.
have manipulated your entire life and experimented on you without your knowledge and manipulated you into doing exactly what I wanted. Don't you love me for it?
But I gave you what you
my
wanted. See,
God.
that's the key.
So
It's like,
horrible.
that's her. That's the argument. It's like, but I gave you what you wanted, what I knew that you wanted. So I'm sure there's a commentary in there somewhere. So that's our teen book. It's got a little bit darker themes. There is some fun in there because Joe and his friends are kind of based off of me and my friends. We're all nerdy. We love comics and action figures and video games. So there's going to be that aspect, and you're going to see the fun of them, going through that superhero origin story. But seeing it from her point of view is how we tried to make it a little bit more interesting and different. So that way, it's not just the classic superhero origin. So. The other book that we have that's actually where the name Child's Play comes from. Child's Play was actually a comic and game shop my wife and I owned here in town for a couple of years before COVID. Thankfully, we closed it or sold it before COVID. And we had the mascot of our store was based on my wife. It's a little girl named Malia Mayhem, who is essentially my wife. She loves cosplay. She loves tabletop. She loves going to cons. So we created this character as the mascot of our store, and we actually had a origin for her up at the store. I had a friend create essentially a one-page comic and put it on a poster and put it up on the wall, and people always thought that was kind of cool. So our goal was, even after selling the store, was to always have her featured in her own book. And so the inspiration for this comes from a little bit from the 1980s Dungeons & Dragons cartoon, a little bit from the Neverending Story, where essentially she goes to a con one day, she finds like a booth all by itself, and there's like a little red glowing D20, and when she touches it, it teleports to this world called the Tabletopian Realm, where essentially all her favorite tabletop games come to life. And in that world is we call him a mischievous force. He's not really evil per se, he's just mischievous. His name is Troll, and that comes from the idea of my wife and one of her best friends, who they always used to love to troll each other when they would play board games to the point of aggravation. And so we were like, well, what if he's in the game world messing things up, and kind of like in a D20 is a dice. It's the famous dice used in Dungeons & Dragons. It's got 20 sides. So the first
Kyron, for shame.
I know, right?
For shame, Kyron, not knowing what a D20 is.
It's okay.
I'm going to need you to hand over that nerd card, sir.
If you pick up this issue, sir, you'll learn all about it. Because you're into a world that the first world she goes to is inspired by Dungeons & Dragons, which Fish is going above and beyond here. I did not expect him to draw a dragon on our cover. He's doing a variant cover here. And so that is looking awesome, by the way, Fish. I love that. But yeah,
how do you skip out on the opportunity to draw a dragon?
I know, right? but yeah, so that's essentially the thing, is that it created such a template, right? That we're anytime we do an issue with her, we can pick one of our favorite tabletop games and just plunk her in it. And so it kind of allows for as many stories as we can tell, or as we're allowed to tell, I guess, as we can continue to create the book. We do have an ending for it in mind, but it's one of those that the ending, I was always taught like to have what we call a trapdoor in storytelling, to where you could kind of end it at any time if you wanted to. Obviously, the longer the series goes, the more we could flesh out the story. But if we had to end it in like 4 issues, we could. It just wouldn't be as epic, I guess you could say, but it would be more like almost like an animated movie at that point. Time will tell. Backers will tell. Money will tell of how much we get to do with it. So, but yeah, that's going up on Kickstarter on October 1st. We do have a pre-launch page, which I made a super simple website to go to, just childsplaycomiczero.com. Spell out the word zero, it'll take you straight to the page. We've actually got a couple of followers since we've been talking, so that's pretty awesome.
Oh, that's awesome.
Whoever has followed so far, thank you so much. We're 52 followers so far.
Now see there, Katie, that's your problem. You got to store your D20s 20 side up so all the weight settles to the bottom. That way it'll keep rolling that way. You can't just put them in there willy-nilly. That's why your rolls are so bad. You got to store your dice correctly. Thank you, Philly, for bringing that out. Like, not everybody knows. Some people, the Chirons of the world, if you will, don't know how to properly store their dice. You've got to store it 20 side up.
Well, he didn't even know what it was. So how can he store what he doesn't know what it is?
Just like, as the game master, I'm always the game master. I have a stack of dice that I store 20 sided up. I have a stack of dice that I store one up, so that like when the players need to roll, I know which dice I'm giving me and which dice I'm giving them.
That's funny. Philip, who's in the chat, is our DM for a D&D game we did actually during the pandemic. We did virtually, so that was a lot of fun. But yeah, it's my wife is our game master. She, that was her role in the store. She loved the tabletop aspect. I loved the comic aspect. So we were literally a match made in heaven in that respect. So, and now it's so funny because she already learned how to teach me games, which is don't try to explain it to me, just show it to me. I'm going to stumble through it once. The way I play games is very much the way I do life, I guess. I stumble through it a little bit and then I learn and then I come back and then I can play much better. So, but
I'm going to fake my way through it until I get it.
Fake it till you make it, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been fun, and it's I think you and I talked about it. It's definitely a lot of work, out there promoting and whatnot. But it's fun to get to do stuff like this, though. We get to talk about it, and as you're working on
and
the
like
cover.
I've made so many new friends out pitching my books on podcasts and stuff, and like I may not have known them before, but now like we're legit friends, and talk all the time and stuff. And like I didn't really know Sarah that well before in the comments before I went on their Unlikely Hero Studio show back in the day. And next thing you know, like I'm guest hosting and stuff every time Lori couldn't be there, and like we're actual friends now. We talk all the time, and she's always on watching me stream in the mornings because like we're legit friends. I got her back in anything she needs now because we make connections like this, getting to know. Exactly. Like I fill in for Lori so much that usually now I just put my name as not Lori when I fill in for her.
Did Sarah just do a Kickstarter?
Yeah, they've got one going right now, and they funded like that. It is Heart Eater, I believe is the name of it. It's a adult pirate adventure fantasy.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, just launched on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's the other thing too.
yeah.
It's like trying to keep up with everybody. You know. Oh, that's awesome. A sexy pirate adventure. There you go. See, why was that so hard to say, Fish? But that's the other thing too. That's been, I guess you could call it a pleasant problem. It's like as you get to know more people, you know, it's like their books pop up. Like I'm not gonna lie, Kyron. Like I literally went up until the day of because I was like I'm waiting for a check to come in, but I really want to back his book. Like I want to it's that, you know, and you know, I've had to go for digital more than physical, unfortunately, because I'm trying to spread that money around a little bit more. And it's hard, you know. I try to even with this book, like this book's going to be 44 pages long because it's a collection. It's, you know, it's still, even cover A is only going to be $8, you know. So even the other two variant covers are $10 each. Eddie Nunez's is going to be like $12. So, you know, I've tried to keep them down as much as I could. Like I said, it is a thicker book though. So, you know, I know most books are around 22, 24 pages. So, but
yeah, that's one thing that I tell everybody that asks me about, like, you know, they want to get started on Kickstarter and stuff. And I tell everybody now, you need to set yourself a budget, a monthly budget, and start investing in Kickstarters like you would invest in anything else, because you're going to learn so much from other people's books. You're going to learn so much from their campaigns and like what kind of tiers got the most results, what campaigns were successful. What did you love about the way this campaign was fulfilled, and what made you mad, so that you don't want to make that mistake on your own. There's just so much, and you meet such awesome people. And when you find one that you really like, man, hit that creator up and tell them how much you enjoyed it, and ask them, you know, for advice and stuff. Like, most of us would love to hear from somebody that loved our book. And man, I could talk about Green Zone and Call all freaking day long. Your problem would be getting me to shut up once you start. And do that, because, you know, not for nothing, like, when you launch a Kickstarter, I didn't realize when I launched my first one that, you know, it showed this was my first Kickstarter that I launched, and I had backed 0 books. I didn't even know you could back books on Kickstarter until like a week before, and I set this whole Kickstarter thing up. So I didn't have time. Now, like, when you go look at my account, it's like, you know, well, I've launched 2 now on my own account and has backed like 299. So people know that, like, I'm an invested member of the community. I care about supporting other people's books as well. And besides what I've picked up and learned from doing it, that just gives me a little bit of credit when people come to my page, because I've heard people say before, like, yeah, I went to go back this comic, but that dude's only backed like 3 comics, and I'm not going to put money into him if he's not putting money into the community, which seems a little cold, I guess, but I've learned so much from it. It's been so valuable. I cannot recommend it enough. And now, like you said, I started out, I set myself a budget of $40 because I'm an artist. I'm broke. I ain't got a lot of money. I set myself a budget of $40, and originally the goal was to be sure I spent that much. And so if I got to the end of the month and I still had like $20 left, I would just go around and start backing books that were real close to hitting the goal and running out of time, and, you know, just spread it around to random people. I don't know. Now I have so many friends in the community. Now, like, it's hard sticking to my $80 budget now. And like, I back a lot more digital comics specifically so I can read everybody's books and back them, but I can back twice as many books digitally as I can physically.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's a few I'm still going to get physical, but I really enjoy digital comics. Some people don't like them. I freaking love them. I can take 600 books with me on my tablet on vacation and read whatever I want to read. I can't carry one of those short boxes with me on vacation. My wife wouldn't put up with that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
No, same here. I mean, I was pretty fortunate. I was just looking the other day. I was like, wow, I've been on Kickstarter as a consumer for 11 years now.
Wow.
But yeah, it was actually a friend of mine. It was 2012, I think. She kickstarted a music CD she did, and that was I had no idea what Kickstarter was at that time. Obviously, in 2012, it was a lot more of a newer platform. I don't know what it. But yeah, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have even known what it was. And then after that, I still would kind of dabble in it. I mean, if you look at some of my early days of Kickstarter backing, it's all kinds of random stuff. It's comics. It's once I met my wife, you can tell where I met my wife because all of a sudden there's board games. So it was board games, especially for the store, right? If a board game Kickstarter had a retail, and we really liked the game. And even more so if they were kind of local, like where we could get them in the store. That was one of our favorite things to do, like have a Kickstarter person, have their campaign up, come to the store, showcase their game, get some more backers, and then we would get the retail. And then when we come in, we take pre-orders, and yeah, it was a whole. We backed several Kickstarter board games.
That's such a blessing to the community to be able to do something like that and support local creators. That's awesome, man. I thank you for doing that for those creators, because I know that was a huge deal for them.
Yeah, and it was fun too. It's like I would say during that time of 2 years of doing it, only one Kickstarter, the dude disappeared, and so there was $100 and something we were out. But one bad experience out of a dozen more that were positive. I see people all the time. It's like, oh, I'm never doing Kickstarter again. I'm like, when the store messes up or whatever, you're not going back to that store, I guess. I don't know. It's like, it's not Kickstarter's fault. It's that one person on Kickstarter that messed it up, So, but whatever, thankfully it hasn't really happened. Even now, I mean, obviously you'll see in the last couple of years, I have a big chunk of comics I've backed, but we still look for board games if we can afford them. I mean, right before the pandemic, we backed some really big ones, because board games, especially if they have miniatures, they can get real expensive real quick, But if it's a card game, that's the one we looked into creating for ourselves, for our characters, is a card game, which is a little bit more affordable. And we still have friends that are, tabletop creators, so we'll back them. And I just backed a Halloween game the other day that looked really good, because like I said, we've got a 2-year-old, so we kind of like buy stuff to kind of plan ahead. Like as he's getting older, we're starting to barely show him.
Oh yeah. I pay so much more attention now to things that I didn't before because of my grandkids. And I'm like, hey, my grandkids are going to enjoy reading this now, or they're going to enjoy reading it in the future, and I can put it away for them. And so, like, I'm backing a whole lot of stuff now with them in mind that before I would have maybe not looked twice at.
Oh no, I was just gonna poke fun at Kyron again, because I say, my son has a giant D20 that's like a stuffed D20 that he gets to roll and play with, and that's like one of the games I've played with him since he could walk. Basically, it's like I roll it, and it's soft, so it can hit whatever. It's not going to hurt anything, and then we'll point at the number. It's like, what did it land on? And he loves that. So,
oh man, my kids! I've been running the same superhero role playing game homebrew for like 30 years now.
Oh wow!
And so my kids grew up playing this game, and they learned to do math on the dice. They learned to read on their character sheets. My youngest son was like, I'm only going to school until I can read my character sheet and comic books, and then I'm coming home, okay? And I'm like, all right, when you get to that point, we'll rediscuss it and see if you're done with school. But I think you're gonna like it. And now Kyra needs Sarah to buy him a D20, because if he wouldn't know where to do that himself.
Maybe next year when we do Malia Mayhem #1, I'll check those Gemini mailers. I think a D20 could fit if you just kind of squeeze it at the top. We'll make that a stretch goal just for Kyron.
Man, you can get those like pizza box style boxes in all kinds of shapes and sizes. Like, I'm sure you've probably seen the dude on TikTok because you're into comics that does his as like a giant mixtape for like book 1 and book 2, or two different mix. I don't know how much those boxes cost to get printed, but OMG, they're freaking beautiful.
Yeah.
I absolutely love them. Exactly. Kyron should just get his butler to buy him one, since he's already said his butler plays.
Oh, Kyron, don't even joke like that, Kyron. There are probably literally some that are made of gold out there.
Absolutely. There absolutely are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Philip. I think, was it Chessex? I think was the company that we used to get our dice from. I'm pretty sure they do custom dice. I would just have to settle on like what could fit on a D20, because I've seen one of our friends who used to own a game store. She had just a traditional 6-sided die, but either on the 6 or the 1, I can't remember. She had the name of her store printed on there. Philip has metal dice.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there's all kinds. Even on Kickstarter, you can find all kinds of unique, different styles of dice. And I mean, obviously, it's just for fun. It's just to change it up a little bit, because so many games require that stuff. One of the favorite things we used to have, I don't know if let me grab this real quick. Hold on. So one of our friends, he makes giant D20s literally out of cardboard and duct tape. Check this out.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So this one, we specifically he put Malia on here. That's all duct tape. He hand cut that and made her face. So we used to have this sitting in a giant bowl of dice, and what the customer would do is they would pay $1 and they could roll this, and whatever number it landed on, they would get that many dice. So that way they would always win something.
Cool.
Yeah, so that was one of the most popular things to do at our store, was to people. This was the actual dice. It's kind of banged up because people would roll it all the time, but this is left over from those days, a little dusty too. But yeah, that was one of the most fun little things that we had for customers at our store. So.
Oh man, I've seen so many clever little bits that people do like that to get extra little sales.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man, it is so cool. Like, I saw somebody that was selling trading cards and stuff for different games, and they would sell mystery packs that were guaranteed to have, like so many of this and one rare or whatnot for X amount of dollars. And they would make so many extra little sales at the cash register. Like, you know what? Go ahead and give me 2 of those too. Just to round out a sale. And such smart stuff.
Oh, Philip, it's a D10. I'm pretty sure Malia's face is a 10 because I see a 9 on there. And then Katie says that she bought novelty set of tiny rubber ducks because his character had the phobia the duck was always watching him. That's funny. We found those little novelty ducks too, but they were superhero themed, and those were another of our dollar purchases. Was little kids would just be like, I want the Batman duck, whatever, and it's like a super easy, quick little sale. I tried that at a con recently. A friend of mine had given me a bunch of those little, I don't know if you know that tabletop game called Hero Clicks, which basically just has a bunch of superheroes. He gave me a bunch of those, and we're just selling them for like, I don't know, $4 for $1 or something like that. But anyway, oh man, I don't know if I want to tell Kyron how old Malia is supposed to be now. That's not the first time that's happened. Everybody always draws her older. It's so funny if you go look in the fan art from the days of the store. We have on our Facebook, we have a folder for fan art. Because in the description, Kyron, she's only 9 years old. but I get the joke being a 10. People always in the fan art drew her older, like teenager for sure. And I was like, and she's obviously drawn in this, well, here she's drawn in more of an anime style, but in the store she was more of a chibi style, so But yeah, I would always ask the artist, I'm like, why did you just automatically up her age? Like, maybe he retracts his last statement.
Because they don't know how to draw anything else,
Yeah,
mostly.
yeah. but yeah,
That's all they've ever practiced.
yeah, it's just funny. And that's why in the description, I always made sure to put her age just to let everybody know. Draw her down, like not up. Don't age her yet. I don't, I would love to run the story that long to where she becomes a teenager, but yeah, I
Mhm.
don't know. We'll see. But we did that on purpose too, because it's just we wanted to evoke kind of those Saturday morning cartoons. In the 80s, there's a lot of those. These kids go on an adventure type of thing. Where it's like. Um, one of those you watch where you're like, okay, those kids are my age. Like I could be going on this adventure. I could be a Goonie. I could I could be
Oh
the
yeah.
last Starfighter. I could be the Flight of the Navigator. All those 80s movies.
Even
Um,
Punky Brewster like had her own cartoon.
mhm.
It was cool to be able to imagine that you could be there too. Somebody my age could be doing these awesome things.
Yeah, but and it's funny too because the world that they're in, I kind of make it almost like a pseudo 80s 90s world. Like I purposely don't give the kids cell phones because I don't want to deal with that. Like I've noticed more and more in movies, like they feel like they have to do the cell phone point of view. If people are texting each other in the movie or whatever. And the first
Hmm.
time I thought it was cool, but I'm like, it almost feels like you have to now because it's just part of our world now, right? So
Yeah.
the world that these kids exist in is more of, like I said, almost like a pseudo 80s and 90s, like that is not really there yet, and it's not really ever going to be the focus anyway. We're going to spend more time in the tabletop world, although there are some scenes in the real world. She's got a group of friends that it's like their tabletop group, and they always kind of start the story of the issue showing what game they're playing, and then we go into the world where from Aaliyah's point of view, and then we usually come back and end it with her group of friends, kind of saying like what happened there, like why did we lose, or why did this game seem like it's broken, and it's planting the seeds. There's each issue is self-contained, so that way you can kind of read it and understand, but there is kind of like that overarching narrative of her friends starting to figure out that something's wrong, because when the series starts they know she's missing, like they know something happened. Was the other aspect I kind of wanted to explore a little bit, kind of like in the Dungeons and Dragons cartoon. It's like, what are those kids' parents thinking right now? Like, what are they? How are they dealing?
Oh
Like,
god.
and I know you can always write it away of, well, time works differently, and when they finally made it back, seconds had passed, and they were like, "Where have you been? You look older,
Hmm.
even though I just dropped you off yesterday." But I kind of want. We're not going to go deep into that aspect, but you are going to see kind of the adults in her world, like, well, what are they doing while she's gone, and how much time is passing? Is it really a one-on-one type of trade-off of what's happening now, which kind of goes with the story. Like if Troll's messing up the game now, then in our world while we're playing it, it's messed up as you and I are trying to play the game. So
Yeah, that's cool, and that's the kind of consequences I want to see in a story. Like I want these things to matter, and it always feels like when you magically come back at the end of an 8-year adventure, and you're 12 again, it just feels like nothing that you did mattered, and there was no consequences to anything. Like that's what really bugged me with the Lion, a Witch, and a Wardrobe is like they spend forever in there, and then come out and they're fine. They're just kids again. Like either deal with the trauma of like I'm a grown ass man stuck in a 12-year-old body. Like I've fought wars out here, and I'm dealing with PTSD, and you're giving me a bedtime, or like have them be gone and everybody missed them and thought they were dead, and they went to tear down the building and they got out of the wardrobe at the last second. Like I want there to be consequences to things. I want things to matter because it's got to matter. I've been invested in it. Why hasn't their world been invested in it?
yeah, I'm probably gonna have to jump off here soon, Fish. I don't know if you want to keep the stream
Oh, that's
going.
all right. I'm gonna have to go pretty soon too because I've got a bunch of stuff I got to get ready for the con. Um, I was hoping that I would have been further along with the pencil sketch before we got here this morning, so I could have got further on this. But,
Yeah, no worries.
wishing
If
one
you
hand.
want to kind of pull it back, we can kind of look at the whole.
Oh, absolutely. Let me turn that off and let me flip it back the right direction and get it straight there. So it's coming along. We're getting there. Let me switch this over so we can get a little bit. When you're working with this many screens, it's easy to get messed up on which screen you're actually on.
Mhm.
But
Yeah,
there we go. We've got him tied up in his suit. She's in her armor. Bigfoot's down here trying to gobble him. We've got Mia running from the troll and the dragon in the background. Thank you, Katie. That means a lot coming from you because she draws some crazy detailed dragons. Let's see. Sarah says, I'm surprised you've been on so long. It's been almost 2 hours. We've been having a good time talking, man. Very cool. Thank you, Philly. Appreciate it. Been nice having all these new folks on the show. Thank y'all for hanging out. I'm live every Tuesday morning on my YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, everywhere you can find me. I'm in all those places, Mr. Fish Comic. Check it out. Thank you so much for coming on, Joe. I'm really excited about these books. Like, I love this story, man. Like, she is my new favorite person to hate. Like, I cannot wait to read the rest of this. Like, she's so terrible and so blind to it, and just, I love it. It's so juicy. I want to tell stories in this place. This is inspiring my imagination, which is like the highest praise I can give something.
Nice. Well, we appreciate it. Like I said, that one's been a long time in the work, so it's nice to finally get some stuff out and people checking it out. So
absolutely, man. It is really interesting. I highly suggest everybody go check it out. Follow the pre-launch page. Absolutely, I'm following it. It launches. I had it written down.
It's
so
October 1st.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I can't trust myself. I can't trust that I have the numbers right. My brain's always like, nah, that's not right. You wrote that down wrong.
And it's if you just go to Child's Play Comic 0, spell out the word 0, Child's Play Comic 0, it'll take you straight to the page. Look at all this support in the chat.
Oh yeah. Kyron's taking advantage of being on the other side of the country.
Oh, nice.
It's only 10 a.m. Yeah. Lucky you over there. We've been at this for a while. We've been up working for a living. We ain't in the 1% living in California.
Oh my God.
I love giving him a hard time about being rich. That is one of my favorite running gags on the show. And it started on his podcast, and Danny kept picking on him just for being rich for living in California. And then we took it and just ran with it. And now, like, Katie will send me pictures of castles in Scotland that are falling apart. Like, Kyron needs to fire his butler. They've really let the maintenance go.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It brings
Gotta love a good running joke.
Oh, yeah. Anyway, thanks again for being on. Go check out his campaign. They're great books. I've got the actual books here. The other thoroughly enjoyed them. Go check it out. Thank you for being here. And I'll see everybody back on Tuesday. See y'all later.
Hello, everybody. It is your Uncle Fish back again for School of Fish Art Stream. J-Man wants a Gatling gun on the end of his tail. Oh, my goodness. J-Man says the tail's where you put all the heavy artillery. Yeah. So you